Mr. President.
The Majority Leader.
Are we in a quorum call?
We are.
I ask consent that be terminated.
Without objection.
Mr. President, to say I'm disappointed is a tremendous understatement. This body is debating a measure that would prevent what national security experts on a bipartisan basis have called the most serious threat to our nation since the dawn of the nuclear age. Senator McCain called this danger an existential threat to our nation. Democrats were prepared to work on a bipartisan basis to pass this legislation. Mr. President, I personally have convened many, many meetings going back 2 years ago to have a piece of legislation that we could pass through this body. In those 2 years' time, things have gotten worse, not better, as far as threats to our country. We've been prepared to address concerns raised by the private sector, and I think it's only fair to say that for the leaders of the committees involved in this issue, there's been real cooperation, both by Democrats and Republicans. And I've said here on the Senate floor many times that the work of Senator Lieberman and Senator Collins has been exemplary. The major part of this bill in their jurisdiction, dealing with Homeland Security. I have always envisioned that they've been prepared to engage in a robust debate and consider amendments designed to perfect the bill. I know that's how I feel. And above all, I thought we had all been prepared to put national security above partisan politics to address this urgent matter. And I was surprised this morning to hear Senator McConnell say that he would like a vote on repealing Obamacare on this bill. And that's really not appropriate. Some Republican senators have said that this matter is going to be filibustered unless they have the right to vote on an amendment to repeal health care reform. And obviously that's it. The Republican leader said that. Excuse me. Then, Mr. President, I thought that might fade away. Every Tuesday, after our caucuses, Republicans have one, Democrats have one. Senator McConnell and I go here to the Ohio caucus, it's called, and both make a statement and answer questions the press gives us. It's not a jump ball. Whoever goes first gets to make the first presentation. We wait until the other one is not ready. So he goes first sometimes, I go first sometimes. But the important point in the one today is that, and I'm paraphrasing, but the point is certainly valid, that Republican leader said out here with the entire press corps and his leadership team with him that cybersecurity, and I remember I'm paraphrasing, is something that we should do, but it'll take several weeks to do it. Not this week. Compare that, Mr. President, to the words of General Keith Alexander, commander of the United States Cyber Command, who wrote Senator McConnell and I today. And here's what he said. This is a quote. The cyber threat facing this nation is real and demands immediate action. The time to act is now. We simply cannot afford further delay. Close quotes. Mr. President, I've tried to figure out a way of describing how I feel about this. I said disappointed, and that's certainly true. Flummoxed, that's certainly true. I can't understand why we're here where we are in this position. I'm so disappointed that Leader McConnell and his colleagues, some of his colleagues, would prevent us from acting on this urgent threat. I'm particularly astounded that they would rather launch yet another attack, for example, on women's health, and work to ensure the security of our nation. I have no choice but file cloture on this matter. I would hope we could get cloture. But I'm a realist, as I've learned after having tried to work through 85 different filibusters in this congressional session. I remain hopeful that they'll come to their senses and realize the urgent need for action on this matter. There was a really inspirational presentation made in our caucus today by Senator Barbara Mikulski of Maryland. Again, I'm paraphrasing, but I'm pretty direct in remember what she said. I wasn't present when Senator McConnell made his statement. Senator Mikulski said, I've served on the Intelligence Committee for 10 years. And she said, this legislation creates a rendezvous with destiny for our country. We have to do something, and we have to do it soon. I have stated to Senator Lieberman, to Senator Collins, to anyone that will listen, is this is not a partisan piece of legislation, Mr. President. It shouldn't be. I'm happy to work on an agreement to consider relevant amendments, but this matter has been pending since last Thursday. Today is Tuesday, and basically the slow walk that I'm so used to around here is taking place. I hope we can find a final path forward. Senators from both sides of the aisle have come to me personally and said they've invested time, lots of time, in this matter, and they're trying to forge a consensus. I take them at their word. But they all seem powerless to buck the filibuster trend we have here. So, Mr. President, I hope that when the dust settles here, that we can set aside crass politics and work together for the good of our nation and can achieve a strong, effective, bipartisan cybersecurity bill. Mr. President, Tom Donahue, head of the Chamber of Commerce, is my friend. He really is. But I'm terribly disappointed in the Chamber of Commerce. We started out with having a requirement that business and private sector would be required to do certain things. Senator Lieberman and Collins backed off from that. And now it's kind of a voluntary deal. It's much weaker than I think it should be, but why in the world would they oppose that? They, meaning the Chamber of Commerce, which has sucked in most all the Republicans on this. That is really unfortunate. So, Mr. President, on behalf of Senator Lieberman, Collins, and others, I call up Amendment number 2731, which is at the desk, and I ask it be reported.
The clerk will report.
Senator from Nevada, Mr. Reed, for Mr. Lieberman and others, proposes an amendment number 2731.
I ask for the yeas and nays on that amendment.
Is there a sufficient second? There appears to be.
On
The
behalf,
yeas and nays are ordered.
thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of Senator Franken, I call amendment number 2732, which is also at the desk.
The clerk will report.
Senator from Nevada, Mr. Reed, for Mr. Franken, proposes an amendment number 2732 to amendment number 2731.
I have an amendment, Mr. President, to the language proposed to be stricken.
Report.
Senator from Nevada, Mr. Reed, proposes an amendment to the language proposed to be stricken by amendment number 2731.
I ask for the yeas and nays on that.
Is there a sufficient second? There appears to be. The yeas and nays are ordered.
I have a second degree amendment at the desk.
The clerk will report.
Senator from Nevada, Mr. Reed, proposes an amendment number 2734 to amendment number 2733.
Mr. President, I have a cloture motion at the desk.
The clerk will report. Cloture motion.
I'd like to motion, we, the undersigned senators, in accordance with the provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, hereby move to bring to a close the debate on S-3414, a bill to enhance the security and resiliency of the cyber and communications infrastructure of the United States, signed by 17 senators as follows.
Mr. President, I would ask unanimous consent to the names of the not be read.
Without objection.
I have a motion to commit the bill with instructions.
The clerk will report the motion.
Senator from Nevada, Mr. Reed, moves to commit S-3414 to the Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs with instructions to report back forthwith with an amendment number 2735.
Mr. President, I ask for the yeas and nays on that motion.
Is there a sufficient second?
There appears to
There
be.
appears to be. The yeas and nays are ordered.
I have an amendment to the instructions at the desk.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Senator from Nevada, Mr. Reed, proposes an amendment number 2736 to the instructions to commit the bill.
Ask for the yeas and nays on that amendment.
Is there a sufficient second? There appears to be. The yeas and nays are ordered.
I have a second-degree amendment at the desk.
The clerk will report.
Senator from Nevada, Mr. Reed, proposes an amendment number 2737 to amendment number 2736.
I ask unanimous consent the mandatory quorum under Rule 22 be waived with respect to the cloture motion that has just been filed.
Without objection.
I now move proceed to count number 473 S-3429.
The clerk will report.
Motion to proceed to calendar number 473 S-3429, a bill to require the Secretary of Veterans Affairs to establish a Veterans Job Corps and for other purposes.
Note the absence of quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Mr. President,
Senator from Connecticut.
I thank the Chair. Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that further proceedings under the quorum code be dispensed with.
Without objection.
I thank the Chair. Mr. President, I rise to respond to the statement of the Majority Leader. First to say that I share his sadness and disappointment that he had to file a petition for cloture on this Cybersecurity Act. But I totally agree with the decision he's made. I don't think he had any choice. I think we're facing, on the one hand, an urgent, real, and growing threat to our security and our prosperity because we're vulnerable, that is, the privately owned cyber infrastructure of our country is vulnerable to attack from foreign enemies, from non-state actors like terrorist groups, from organized criminal gangs that are just out to steal billions of dollars over the Internet, and from hackers. So we're dealing with a real problem that all the non-political security experts from the last administration, the Bush administration, and this one, the Obama administration, say is rising rapidly to being the #1 threat to American security. Over the Internet now, because of our vulnerability, over cyberspace, a foreign enemy can do us more damage than the terrorists did to us on 9/11. It's that stark. And So that's one reality. The other reality is that Senator Collins and I, Senator Rockefeller, Senator Feinstein have been working literally for years. As Senator Reid said, because of the urgency of the problem, we decided we can't just fight for 100% of what we thought was best to protect our security. We pulled back. We made it not mandatory. We have standards being set for the private sector to defend itself and us better, and we're creating carrots and not sticks to encourage them to opt into those cybersecurity standards. That's one reality. The other reality is that in our government, notwithstanding controversy here, all the departments are working like a team. As General Alexander, the head of the Cyber Command at Department of Defense, says, cybersecurity is a team sport. Department of Homeland Security, Department of Defense, the FBI, the intelligence community, all working together to protect our country, but they don't have the tools they need, and they urgently need this bill. And yet the other reality is here in the Senate, where once again we're gridlocked. We can't even get the consent necessary to take up amendments to vote on. Senator Collins and I have said all along, just get this bill to the floor. Let the chamber, the 100 senators, work their will on germane and relevant amendments, and something good will result for the country. So here's the bill on the floor, and yet members are blocking us from taking up those amendments. And I'm afraid, the consequence is that they're running out the clock. A lot of good work done by those of us who sponsored the pending legislation and a very constructive bipartisan group led by Senator Kyl, Senator Whitehouse, including 3 additional members of the Democratic caucus and Republican caucus, have worked very hard to bridge the gaps. We've come closer together. But we're not going to work this out unless we can vote. And I wish we hadn't come to this point, but Senator Reid has made the correct and necessary decision, and it will confront the members of the Senate on Thursday with a decision. Are you going to vote for cloture to at least allow the chamber to consider all the amendments on this bill that are germane and relevant, or are you going to say, no, I'll only settle for exactly what I want, and I don't want this bill, therefore I'm going to vote against cloture and run the risk, which all the independent cybersecurity experts in our nation tell us we will run if we don't do anything, that we'll suffer a major attack. Or at least we will continue to suffer major cyber theft. So, you know, I'm saddened. We've worked very hard on this, but that's not the point. The point is that there's an urgent necessity to pass this legislation. It ought to be nonpartisan. It ought not to be the victim of special interest pleading. It ought to be all of us coming together, as we usually have on national security matters, to put the national security interest of the American people ahead of special interests, to resolve our differences, to settle for less than 100%, and to get something done to protect our country? Or is this going to be another case where the Senate fails to bridge the gaps, fails to be willing to make principled compromises, and therefore fails not only to fix a problem, but in this case to protect our country from a very clear and present danger of cyber attack and cyber theft. So Thursday will be the day of decision. I hope perhaps meetings can occur tomorrow in which we can reconcile our differences and agree on a method to go forward. If not, every member of the Senate is going to have to decide whether they want to block action on cybersecurity legislation or whether they want to go forward and consider the amendments on both sides that have been filed. I thank the Chair, and I yield the floor. And I would suggest the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
President.
The senator from Connecticut.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that further proceedings under the quorum call be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Strikes me as I call you, Mr. President, that I once had the high honor to support a man who shared your name, indeed your father, for President of the United States. So it's nice to be able to call you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to a period of morning business with senators permitted to speak therein for up to 10 minutes each.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the Committee on Foreign Relations be discharged from further consideration of SRS 525 and that the Senate proceed to its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report.
Senate Resolution 525, honoring the life and legacy of Oswaldo Paya Sardinas.
Is there objection to proceeding to the measure? Without objection, the committee is discharged and the Senate will proceed to the measure.
Mr. President, I further ask that the amendment offered by the Senator from Florida, Mr. Nelson, which is at the desk, be agreed to. The resolution as amended be agreed to. The preamble be agreed to. The motions to reconsider be made and laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate. And that any statements relating to the measure be printed in the record at the appropriate place as if read.
Without objection.
I thank the chair. Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that when the Senate completes its business today, it adjourn until 9:30 a.m. on Wednesday, August 1st. That following the prayer and pledge, the Journal of Proceedings be approved to date, the morning hour be deemed expired, and the time for the two leaders be reserved for the use later in the day. That the Majority Leader be recognized and the first hour be equally divided and controlled between the two leaders or their designees, with the Republicans controlling the first half and the majority controlling the final half.
Without objection.
Mr. President, the Majority Leader filed cloture on the cybersecurity bill today. As a result, the filing deadline for first-degree amendments to S-3414 is 1 p.m. on Wednesday. I want to indicate to my colleagues that we continue to work on an agreement on amendments to the bill, which I hope we can reach. If no agreement is reached, the cloture vote will be on Thursday. If there is no further business to come before the Senate, Mr. President, I ask that the Senate adjourn under the previous order.
The Senate stands adjourned until 9:30 a.m. tomorrow.
Members today continued work on cybersecurity legislation.